put you on the map. This is Ron Costa broadcasting live from the Mappable USA studios in Las Vegas, Nevada. And folks, you have a company, you got to be trained. And today we're going to be talking about some training applications. And before we do that, let's introduce Vicki Hutchmauer from the World Token Market. Vicki, how are you doing today?
I'm fabulous today, Ron. It's a beautiful day in Vegas, and we have an interesting guest today. We're going to talk about Reg A and the pros and cons and goods and bads and how he got through it and how he made it better. So let's get started with this. This should be fun.
Reg A is everywhere, absolutely. So let's introduce Tom Schenck. He's the CEO of Co-optrade. Tom, how are you doing over there?
Well, we're in San Diego, and as you can well imagine, the weather here, like you, is absolutely gorgeous. And I appreciate you and Vicki giving me the opportunity to talk to your listeners. So I'm ready to go and see how many people we can help today.
Oh,
it's
sounds
our
great.
pleasure, Tom.
Listen, I'm sure people, well, I'm not sure, but if people haven't gotten down to San Diego, they have to. San Diego is an amazing town. You got everything on a block. There's a baseball field and great bars, restaurants, the beach. You're living the life there, Tom. No question about it. So
no complaints, that's for sure. No complaints. Although most of my professional career was back east, so I can appreciate every single San Diego day. Let me tell you.
Well, let's dive into that.
True, Ray.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. Now that's bringing back memories for me too. So Tom, let's talk about your background first. Tell us all about yourself.
Well, again, thank you so much for having me. I am a grateful and honored oldest of 7 children, where my mother raised 7 of us. She worked on weekends for extra money as a waitress and got her master's in counseling and changed the lives of generations of underprivileged kids and really instilled 2 things in me. One is that you never give up in the face of adversity of any kind, and 2, the absolute power of education to change lives. So that's kind of my beginning, and everything I do, I've always got her looking down at me in terms of what I do with education and what I do to help people and just promote positive business practices.
Yes.
Professionally, I am a 3rd-generation educator. I have run private schools. I've done recruiting. I've done fundraising. And also I've got 10 years as the #1 salesperson for advertising sales for Yellow Book. So
okay, great.
That's
great.
essentially
and
the main part of my background. And now obviously I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm still involved in education.
So tell us about the Co-optrade too. What do you do with that?
Sure. Well, as I may have mentioned before we turn the show on, in the last 3 years, over 500 private schools and educations closed forever. And it's a huge problem, obviously, because these institutions are crucial to education for all of our kids. Things like COVID, there's more competition from online institutions, tech programs. Actually, the growth curve has flattened, so there's not as many kids available, and fewer families couldn't afford the tuition, which has outpaced inflation tremendously. And most importantly, because there are people who can afford private school and private colleges, the admission staff was more in the realm of being order takers rather than aggressive salespeople. And this is where we are now. They just didn't have these aggressive skills. And so that's what happened to these schools. They were not able to attract the families they had to. And so what we have done is we offer the only global online sales training specifically designed for admission professionals, so they can go out and engage more referrals and enroll more families down through the process. And that's really the main focus of our business. And it's exploded because these schools, this is their lifeblood. 95% of all revenue comes through tuition. So if you don't have enough kids, the whole institution suffers. And as I mentioned earlier, over 500 have absolutely closed. And the sad thing is they were great schools, most of them.
Yeah.
but they didn't have the recruiters at their school with the skills that they needed.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. So when you say this is all online too, right? Do people just go to the website and create an account?
Well, it's all online, and essentially our business model is, first of all, admissions people don't have a lot of time for training, but they have to make time for training. So what we've done, we've created a process whereby we've got a month's worth of what we're calling micro videos, where they can learn 30 different steps, and then at the end of the month, they can go and rinse and repeat and get those trainings over and over. So that's one thing we've done. We also developed an over 150-page playbook, which has got everything from how they can objectively set their organized day, scripts. As you know, in sales, you can't wing it. You've got to have the right things to say to the right people at the right time. And also, in that playbook, they can get it online, all in one package, and they can also access it with a micro video with a particular chapter. So we really cut it down into bite-sized pieces, and obviously we want to be able to make it customized, so we have a online virtual meeting once a week for an hour for the first 3 months, the 90 days, where we change their culture and really get them to be aggressive about going after leads and then prospective families.
Yeah, so you're looking at an educational environment, and you're bringing in educational products to that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you, do we have competition? Yes, we do. But the thing that really sets us apart is all our competition only uses the word marketing. You see, 30 years ago, marketing was a scary word. Schools were usually, as I said, order takers. Then it became more competitive. Now every school has a director of marketing. Well, sales is the next frontier, because they have to have very specific processes to not only engage referrals and engage parents, but actually get them all the way through until they enroll. And none of our competition even uses the word sales. It's incredulous to me, but they're still hiding behind this word marketing for two reasons. One, myself and my other trainers have got a hybrid background. Like I said, I've got 30 years in education at all levels of success, but also I've got over 10 years in corporate sales. Same way with our other trainers. Our competition does not have that. These people are educators, so they don't really even understand how to succeed in a very competitive environment. And that's one of our secret sauces, I guess you could say. And to prove a point that there's a huge need, we started 3 years ago, and we were making money after 3 months. In fact, in the next year, when we get the funding we're looking for, we're going to be able to 10x our profits to over $2 million. So
wow, that's impressive.
Absolutely explode.
So I understand, Tom, that you decided that you were going to go and pursue crowdfunding to generate funds to expand your business. How did you come to the conclusion that fundraising, whatever platform, was a good thing for you?
Vicki, that's an excellent question. And I think that is one of the things that a lot of companies, when they're thinking of going public, don't even consider. And that is, they advertise their company, but they literally have to advertise their stocks. Their stocks are like another company you've got to promote. And if you don't promote it, if you don't have a investor relations strategy to get momentum behind the purchase of your stocks, you might as well, be an oasis in the desert. So crowdfunding Go ahead.
Yeah. No, yeah. And so what did crowdfunding do?
Okay, so what there are, by the way, there are a number of crowdfunding companies, and there was the 2012 Jobs Act that really made it for the first time available for the little guy investor to put their funds towards stocks of other companies, because in the past you had to be a qualified investor and you had to have at least $1 million as part of your portfolio or your net worth. Now you don't need to have that. So any company that's able to get in front of large groups of people is able to have a lot more momentum if they can excite people about their stock. Now, there are crowdfunding companies that don't charge you anything to be on their platform up front. They might take maybe 7 to 10% fee of funds that are attracted. So you really have to kind of find out what crowdfunding, what your finances are like and what crowdfunding company that you want to be part of. There are some crowdfunding companies that are going to charge you $50,000 up front. So I would caution any private company looking to do that to see, yes, are you going to have to spend some money in this process of going to the public market? Yes, but the levels at which you want to spend aren't necessarily, you're spending more, are you going to get what you're hoping for? So you really have to do your due diligence for crowdfunding. And I'll just share one other thing about crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is not a panacea in that you get involved with them and all of a sudden maybe they got 5,000 investors, qualified investors or unqualified, doesn't make any difference. But they could say we've got 100,000. The key is you still have to do your own marketing. What I mean by that is, yes, they'll put your site up, or they have kind of a mini site thumbnail of a bunch of different companies where investors can click on and take a look at. But you still have to use a database. Maybe you've got a great database already as a private company. Or you can try to buy lists. You can try to combine. Maybe there's other friends that you've got who are going to help give you some lists to start sending out. What you really want to send out is a investor landing page. Basically, it's where you want to sell your stock, sell your company, and if they like it and you're already registered on the SEC, then they can have a button that says invest here. But you really have to have control of your own database. You cannot depend on a crowdfunding platform. They're only going to take you so far. And I think that's really important for people considering going public.
So did you hire a consulting company to help you go through the process from A to Z?
No, we have not yet hired. We're going to do some things organically because I've got some good partners who are involved in other companies. And we're right now really putting together the foundation. And when I say the foundation, that has to do with a very effective pitch deck. And I would suggest that companies put together two types of pitch decks. One is a pitch deck that you talk from. Say you're in front of a group of people, so you're going to have less verbiage because you're talking to them. And another pitch deck that you can send to people, which is a little bit more explanatory. There are a lot of different types of pitch decks, but traditional wisdom says you really, for that first pass for investors, really not more than 10, maybe 12, 15 slides. And that's something to keep in mind. And there's a fellow by the name of Kiyosaki who's got, he says you don't want to have any more than 10 slides, not more than 2 slides a minute, and the font of your slides should be at least 30 point. So those are a couple little things. But getting back to what I said, we're laying the foundation. So we have not hired a marketing firm yet. Like so many things virtually or marketing-wise, you really have to do your due diligence because there's a lot of companies out there, even in promoting their own companies, whether it's search engine optimization, whether it's social media, whether it's paid advertise. You've got to really know what you're doing and really vet some of these companies. Talk to other people. I think you really have to get references and see how they've really, and talk to these companies and say, did they feel they got their money's worth? Because a lot of times companies are all excited, they've got money to burn, and they're just scattershotting their funds. And those funds, I'll tell you, can go very quickly if you're not really organized with a real plan.
Sure. Yeah, no question about that.
And Mappable has podcasts that we've done with people who can explain the process and take you through the process and help you to vet, because there's a lot of shysters in the Reg A and crowdfunding industry that will take advantage of people just because they haven't done due diligence and they don't understand the process and they don't know what to expect, and so they get scammed by a lot of these companies. And so it's very important what you said, doing due diligence and making sure you know what you're doing, at least understand the language of the industry so you can have a coherent conversation to find out where you're going. But so what I'm hearing is that you haven't launched your crowdfund platform yet. You're in the process of doing it.
That is correct. We're taking a look at some of the different options, and maybe it would be a little helpful to share with the readers a little bit of some of the things that you want to do. Obviously, when you're putting this together, first and foremost, you've got to get approval by the SEC, and that's a process where essentially you're putting together a very detailed application, or what's known as the circular, that goes to the SEC. I think our circular is about, we're actually updating our circular, but it's about 40 pages. And as you can well imagine, there's plenty of boilerplate in it, but you also have obviously some very specific things that you have to have in there. One of the things that's very important is, now we're doing Regulation A+ Tier 2, which means that we are probably going to end up on what they call the over-the-counter market is kind of the starter point for companies going public, although it doesn't mean that you are a small company. There are billion-dollar companies on what they call the over-the-counter market. Then, of course, everybody's heard of NASDAQ. Everybody's heard of, the New York Stock Exchange. But everybody's got to go through the vetting process by the SEC. And one of the things that you're going to have to do is you're going to have audited financials. And at this level, the audited financials are not nearly as extensive as if you were, say, going to the New York Stock Exchange, where it's a real deep dive. It could cost you anywhere from $25,000 to $200,000 plus. I mean, it's an expensive process, and you've got to be very patient. So our strategy is really to get in at kind of this starter level, as I said, but you can be very successful if you have a plan to generate a lot of activity and a lot of momentum in terms of the purchases of your stock. But you do have to have audited financials. Just to continue on with this process, let's say you've got your audited financials, you've filled out the circular application. You can't just download it and send it into the SEC. You have to have what's called a transfer agent. And one of the most, I think, they're personable, they're highly effective, and they communicate well, and that is Colonial. They're out of Utah. And what you do is you send everything to them, and they basically reformat it. It's a formatting called Edgarizing. And then once that's done, then they will send it to the SEC. Now, once the SEC has it, it's usually a back and forth process. I mean, they're not there to trip people up or anything else. They just want to make sure that for everybody's sake, all the I's have been dotted, all the T's have been crossed. And that process could take anywhere from probably a month, but closer to 6 months. I mean, just to be realistic about it. And then once you're approved, then you can literally start selling your stocks. You're not on the open market, because the next level to get on the open market or the OTC, you have to get the short term is just another form called a 211, and you also have to be able to be in a position where your stocks can be sold over the counter or electronically transferred. As I said, it's I sometimes liken it to buying a house on steroids. Everybody's got their hand out. There's a lot of little procedures, but you have to have a transfer agent, and that's Colonial. And the folks that are going to give us the 211 and all the rest of the updates, we're working with a company called Glendale, which is also a highly reputable company. So those are a couple or some of the steps that you go through as you go through getting to the over-the-counter markets.
Yeah, excellent points. And I'm familiar with both those companies that you mentioned. I got to tell you, Tom, from what people charge, like legal fees and accounting fees and brokerage fees and all these other fees that you pay, your transfer agent probably does the most work for the least amount of money. It's the most affordable part of the entire process, isn't it?
No, that's very. You're absolutely right. In fact, what I was saying is once you get that website up, and your investor site, if you will, and there's a button where an investor can hit it, that button actually goes into the back end of Colonial, where they basically do the vetting. They get the name, rank, and serial details from the investor, and then in our case, we've got an account set up, so someone literally sends in the money, and then it goes right into our investor account. And then they are sent electronically, which is what you really want. They get their stock certificate, and we get the invested money.
Right.
But you have to have a transfer agent to do that.
Yeah, and the process that you just mentioned, a lot of these guys will start with the intention of eventually going onto the OTC or some kind of a listing on a public market like that. But the whole process is not cheap. It takes a lot of money to do this stuff. But what's even more expensive when you think about the end game is it's expensive to get on the OTC, and then it's also expensive to stay on the OTC. Do people realize that?
Probably not. Like I said, it's like buying a house on steroids. There's always one other detail to be completed or redone. One of the things that one of our strategies just with Co-optrade is as soon as we get to the SEC, we are going to have some pre-IPO offers to early investors, whereby they can come in and buy these stocks at a discount. So when we finally, in fact, do go public, then they're able to buy more of these stocks once we get on the public market. So it's going to be, we're going to make it very exciting for our investors.
And then you mentioned also that the offering has to be approved by the SEC, or maybe a better word is even qualified, right? Because some people think of the approval like, oh, SEC approved, it must be a good investment. But if they think, well, it's qualified, that's a whole different story. SEC looked at this, they said, okay, you guys are okay to move forward. Do you see any distinction there between those two words?
Well, I think most importantly is an investor has to do their due diligence. There's a friend of mine, he goes, Americans love risk, and he's right. If there weren't people out there who were able to accept, everybody's got a different tolerance of risk. But it's always good for the investor to do their due diligence. And I think the companies that do it right are the ones that are as transparent as they could possibly be. Because the best way to do this is, again, you have two responsibilities once you go public. Is one, obviously, is to your customers who you want to sell your goods and services to, but as well as your investors. You want them to be happy. You want them to buy more stocks. You want them to not sell your stocks. You want them there for the long term, just like you would a customer. And I think that's very important for companies to understand as well. So getting back to where we were, or we're probably, by the way, the other thing you have to do before you send it into the SEC, basically it's, for lack of a better term, you have to have a letter of blessing from a qualified attorney who says that they've looked it over. And so that's something that you've got to have in place also before you even send it to your transfer agent. So where we are right now, Ron and Vicki, is we are going to probably get that thing submitted in the next 2 weeks. And let's think positively. Let's say in the next month after that, we're going to be able to offer these stocks to our pre-IPO investors. So we're very excited about it.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And I think the thing that,
go on, the thing?
Yeah, I know. I was going to say that the thing that we're particularly excited about is, as I said, we, with the right investment, we're projecting a 10x sales just this year, to the tune of about 1.8 million, and that's just the first year. What are we going to do with that money? We are going to really put in high gear a global marketing campaign. We're going to hire more trainers and obviously increase our sales staff. Those three things alone will be incredible, because we've already proven that there's a need. In fact, we started making money, like I said, after the first 3 months.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, I mean, marketing was a dirty word. Now salesperson's a dirty word. And people are, you don't see that on business cards anymore. Yet anything that happens always starts with a sale. So being a good salesperson is probably the best job you could ever have, because if you're good at it, you'll never be looking for work. Right? There's so few of them out there.
No, never.
Right.
Never.
Well said.
You and I have talked before, Ron, and I remember somebody said to me, nothing happens unless something's sold.
Yeah, exactly. I learned that from a Columbo episode a while back.
Well, Columbo knows.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's right. If anybody Columbo knows.
Yeah, I have a couple more questions just before we close this thing out.
Please.
You mentioned before a pitch deck. The pitch deck is different, of course, from the PPM, the private placement. Do you need a PPM for this as well? And does your lawyer come up with that? Who writes your PPM, if you have one?
We don't have one yet.
Okay.
It's one of those things that it's good to have, because the more ways that you can explain your business, the better, particularly something that goes far more into detail. I mean, obviously the circular goes into detail, but this is a nice overview.
Okay, good. And then I just wanted to comment to you that we did a podcast a while back with, I was talking to the guy who's doing the SEC qualification, and I asked him, I said, well, how long did it take for you to get all the comments back and forth? It must have taken you months. And he said, we submitted it, we got 0 comments back. And my response was, who's your lawyer? That's a great thing. 0 comments is incredible. So that's that. And
it's quite a process. Yeah.
And my last question isn't so much as a question. It's kind of like, it's more of a take on what you said earlier, which is so true. I feel like if you guys should just rewind this podcast and listen to what you said a while back over and over and over again, in that you can't just put your deal up on a crowdfunding portal and expect it to be successful. So many people think that, Tom. It's amazing. They just say, they associate the word crowd. We're going to do crowdfunding, and all of a sudden they're going to get all their money that they want because they're going to do crowdfunding. There's so much work involved here, and you really pointed that out. It has to be noted that it's not an easy process, not something that's overnight, and you really got to work at it. And you'd be surprised, you really would be surprised at the number of CEOs who are really smart, build their companies from nothing. They don't understand that point. It's like amazing. So
no, you are so right. In fact, as we're going through this process, as I said, we have a lot of mentors and a lot of people to help us because it is a detailed process. But there's a lot of companies that want to do this, and so we literally kind of simultaneously as we're moving through this process, we are creating a workbook, if you will, or Reg A in a box, so to speak. So we're going to, for somebody that wants to get involved with this consortium, I guess for lack of a better term, we're going to have an attorney. We're going to have, we got an accountant who's got a PhD in accounting. We've already got a marketing guy who will put together slides and your landing page. We've already got somebody that's going to oversee putting this circular together. So we're going to have a team. Now, it's a little tangential to what we're talking about regarding co-op trade, but just for your listeners and Ron, for you and Vicki, please know that if there are people who say, I want to, I've been thinking about it, but I just don't know how to do it, we can do it. And just to finish, one of the things we're going to have, getting back to kind of priming the pump with a momentum of awareness, we are going to have a pre-vetted list that's going to go out to a large number of people for all the clients, if you will, that want to go to the Reg A plus Tier 2. So just to let everybody know that.
Well, you know what? If they're listening right now, Tom, how do they get a hold of you? What's the best way to get more information on all this?
I'm old school. If somebody wants to call me, as I said, I work out of my office here in San Diego. My phone number is 717-538-6000. And if they want to email me for now, because we're getting different emails, but this will get right to me. Just my name, Thomas, Thomas. My middle initial E like egg. And then my last name is spelled SCHENCK @gmail.com. So it's Thomas E. Schenck @gmail.com. And I will get back to anybody within 24 hours. If somebody wants to get in as kind of a ground floor investor to co-op trade, love to hear from you. If you want to know about the process, just in general, taking your company public, either way, I'd be delighted to chat with you.
Excellent. Well, Vicki, what do you think about the insights that Tom's provided here? Pretty on target, huh?
Absolutely, Ron. Crowdfunding is a big world unto its own, and a lot of people think that exactly, and they think it's an easy thing, but it's not. Whether you do Reg A, whether it's Reg A plus, whether it's Reg CF, whatever it is, you have to do three things. You have to market your company before you start the process. If nobody knows about you, nobody will invest in you, and you can't cut corners. You have to know what you're doing, know what's necessary, and if it costs money to do it correctly, you have to pay for it, because otherwise it'll cost you twice as much in the end if you try and do it yourself. And most importantly, do diligent, because there is no such thing as an overnight sensation, and you'll fall into that trap. Never. And people fall into the trap and they see, Joe Blow made $3 million, I can too. But they don't know what it took for Joe Blow to make that $3 million. It wasn't easy, but it's worth it in the end. And Tom pointed it out that it's difficult, but as long as you have the information and you are educated about the process, it should work for you. And I have to say to you, Tom, congratulations and good luck with launching your platform. I hope it's successful for you.
Well, as I said, so far, it has been absolutely incredible. We know there's a market, and all we have to do is get it out in front of more people on a global audience. I mean, you know, we promote the business by going to regional and national educational conferences. We got social media going. We've got paid advertising going. We've got some sales staff. And obviously we've got, you know, our own CRM lists that we reach out to. But it is a nonstop process. Like I said, you are literally promoting two businesses. One is your business. The other is your stock and shareholder business. So you almost have to, you know, you've got to be kind of dual personality, if you will.
Yeah, and now you have a podcast to promote it on as well. So,
there you go.
And I said now you have a podcast to promote it on as well. See that?
Absolutely. And that's a very good point. You know, there's just so many ways to market one's business and obviously one's stocks, if you will. I cannot thank you all for your kind time. Is there anything else I can do for you and your listeners?
I want to thank you for taking the time out to be on the show. And by the way, Vicki left out a really important point too, as far as things not to do. Don't use Comic Sans on your pitch deck as a font. Don't do that.
Well said.
Okay. On that note, thank you, Tom, for being a guest on the show. Thank you, Vicki, for co-hosting it, folks. You're listening to the Mappable USA podcast at MappableUSA.com. Just go to that homepage, scroll down, you'll see all our syndication sources. Pick the one you like best and subscribe. You'll never miss another one of our episodes. If you want to be a guest on the show like Tom was today, there's a guest tab there. Fill that out, and we'll see what we can do about getting you on the show. And if you like what you heard, send us an email at info@MappableUSA.com, or just leave a comment on whatever page this is on right now. So thanks for listening. Thanks for your support. We'll be at you next time with another Mappable USA podcast. Have a great week, everyone.